Chevra, how are you? A good Erev Shabbos. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh Pasha Shlach. Shabbos is Chovov Sivan. Shabbos Mevorchim Tammuz. And next week is going to be Chov Ches Sivan, the day that Rebbe arrived in America 81 years ago. So we have to understand the lessons that we have to take, the messages that Hashem is sending us, and how we could grow and develop spiritually. I hope everyone is gesund, stark, and freilich, begashmis, beruchnis, healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. As usual, we'll start with a prayer. I'm going to say a verse from Kapitel Samach Beis, Pasuk Beis. Ach el Elohim, dumio nafshi, mimeno Yeshua osi, which means to Hashem alone does my soul hope. My salvation is from Him. And the emphasis over here is Ach Elohim, dumio nafshi. The only one you could have hope in is Hashem. Don't put your hope in man. Put your hope in Hashem. Even when there are others like doctors or advisors that are helping you, you have to realize it's Hashem. And that's the point. Focus on what the source is and what the only true reality is, and then you will not falter, you will not fail, and you will not go wrong. In this week's Parsha, we have the story of the spies. I already once spoke about the point that I'm going to speak about today. If you go back to the video 71, we were doing it every day during the pandemic, I spoke about this subject, but today we're going to elaborate a bit more, connecting with other things also. And that is the Sikha of the Rebbe, Shlach Tovshin Memtes. The Rebbe over there speaks about the story of the spies, and he asks the famous question in the beginning of the Parsha. It says, Shlach L'cha, send for yourselves. And Rashi says, Shlach L'cha, send to you. Hashem told Moshe, Shlach L'cha. And Rashi says over here, L'daitcha, ani eini mitzavelach. By your discretion, I do not command you to do so. Im tirtza shlach, if you wish, send forth. So the Rebbe asked the famous question, obviously, and we know the disaster that followed. Moshe sent the spies, they rebelled, and the question is obvious. If Hashem told him l'daitcha, he should have known something's wrong. And like we explained last time in the video, imagine your wife asks you, what color carpet should I buy, blue or green? And you say, no, do whatever you want. The wife doesn't like that. What do you mean? I want to know what your opinion is. So if Moshe Rabbeinu hears Hashem say, do whatever you want, that's already bad news, especially in a case where Moshe Rabbeinu heard from the Eibush the instructions about every single aspect of his life. 630 mitzvahs. Ramachim says, Shesam says, say, everything in Judaism is spelled out in the Shulchan Aruch that tells you how to get dressed from the cradle to the grave, every single aspect of your life. And over here, all of a sudden, Hashem says, do what you want. His senses should have immediately screamed, danger, danger, warning, danger. So what happened over here? And then also the question is, Yeshua was one of the Raglim, and if he saw that it failed, how come he himself later also sent spies when it came to conquering the land? And the Rebbe asked many more questions over there. We're not going to go into all the details. See there. And the Rebbe explains an unbelievable word. And he connects it to the word koyach, chavches, as we'll soon see. And the emphasis is in the word empowerment. What does it mean, empowerment? There's two stages in a person's life. There's one stage in a person's life where you could say it's training. But then there's another stage in a person's life where he graduates. We could trust him. In a way, you could say that this is the avodah of a skafia and a sabcha. The Rebbe in that sikha connects it with the Mishnah, which is beautiful, which says, one part of the Mishnah says, Batel nullify your will to his will, which emphasizes that you have a will, which is a separate will, a will which is against. There's a friction, and we say, yield before God. Batel That will be a skafi. You have to suppress your will, put it aside, and do what the master wants. But then there's a higher level. Make your will his will. It's a makeover. What's there in the end? Only Hashem's will. You so much worked on yourself that you transformed yourself that now your will is his will. I hereby dub thee night, in a way. We trust you now that you'll be mechaven l'ratzna elyon. You'll be aligned. You will be in sync with what Hashem wants. And that means asay retzaycha retzaynai. Now, this is the story of Parsha Shlach. This is the new novelty, the chidush. What's the chidush? That yes, in Judaism, things are black and white, generally speaking. This you're allowed and this you're not allowed. There's choiv, there's obligations, and there's isser, there are things that are prohibited. But then there's a realm called Rishus. We're leaving it up to your mind. We're leaving it up to your discretion. L'daitcha. And we want you to come to the right conclusion. We want you, without being told what to do, to know what Hashem wants you to do. And that means you finally graduated. And you got the diploma. That you're a sort of person that has his mind in line with the Eibishter's mind, with the Shulchan Aruch's mind, with Hashem's mind, even though it didn't have to be spelled out and told to you. Like in general, ask anybody who runs a business, a boss, or a principal, or a manager. He has a worker. You have a principal, and he has a teacher in a classroom. And the teacher calls the principal, crisis, crisis, there's a kid chewing gum. The principal's not happy that he has to come rescue the teacher in a situation where the big threat is that the kid is chewing gum. Handle it. I don't have to rescue you for such a simple, minor, insignificant episode, so to speak. And that's what it means. Shlach l'chol l'daitcha. Hashem is now giving us a koyach. And what's the koyach? The koyach is that in the realm of Rishus, I'm giving over authority to you that you should be able to come to the correct conclusion which the supreme authority wants in the first place, without having to spell it out. And I'm going to paraphrase. In a way, I don't remember exactly what the Rebbe says over there about coming to America. There's no question about it. I'm a child of Holocaust survivors. And the world of my mother, pre-World War II, Minkach, which was the world of chickens and goats, was a different world than, as we call it, the Pepsi generation. My mother was brought up, Metunish Franken Kashes, you're not allowed to ask any questions, und das will der Eibishter, and that's it. You don't ask questions, this is what Hashem wants, and that's it. Now, of course, all Jews are brought up with this concept of Kabbalah Sale. We have to accept the yoke, and that's the foundation of everything. But an approach of just obedience, just plain obedience, without recognizing the person's individuality, will never work post-World War II in the modern world. And by the way, as a side point, I believe that Rebbe, like no other leader, in his talks and in his Chassidus, addresses this very dichotomy of how Judaism, on the one hand, acknowledges and gives affirmation and validation to man's individuality, but at the same time, it allows him to reach transcendence and to go out of his limitations. It's amazing. The truth is, the Alter Rebbe starts that with Chabad Chassidus in Tanya. There's no question about it. Rebbe studied Akdamas HaMalakit, the preface of what the Alter Rebbe writes. It's just unbelievable. And that's actually the point. But nevertheless, in our generation, in the 7th generation of Chabad, post-World War II, especially in the Pepsi generation, in the age of the Pepsi generation and the hippies and individuality, independence and the feelings of independence. So this melding and merging, and to show how Judaism recognizes the person's individuality, but at the same time, he's man enough, he's strong enough to be subservient to a greater authority, a higher authority. And this is what it means, Koyach Sivan. Koyach, the 20th day of Sivan, when the world of Chassidus came to America, the pre-World War II world. The Friedrich Rebbe accomplished one level when he came on Tes Adar Sheni, 1940. The Rebbe was going to be the next leader who took it a notch further, bringing the world of pre-World War II and everything that Judaism stood for thousands of years, and now is going to bring it into the modern world of post-World War II America, replanting the foundations and the seeds of hundreds of years of Hasidism, but at the same time in a new world, and making the message relevant. And to do that, we have to definitely recognize the individual, cultivate the individual, acknowledge the concepts of independence more than ever before, and how it's not a contradiction to discipline, authority, etc. And this is the beauty of this message over here. That's why Shlach is so important to us as Chassidim of the Rebbe. This generation talks very much about Shlichus. There's a Moshe Rabbeinu, he's the Rebbe. He made all of his followers leaders by making them Shluchim. I hereby dub the night, so to speak. But the Shliach has to always remember that on the one hand, only if he stays strongly connected to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he understands that it's about what the Eibishter wants, and he always has to try to pray to come to the right conclusions, then, because he's so united and so loyal, without even having to be told what exactly the right approach and the right attitude and the right perspective is, you will come to the right attitude and perspective because you're so closely attached to the messenger, to the Mishalech, to the Father, to the source, etc. And this is especially true in our generation. And as we said, that's the meaning of koyach. Koyach means an empowerment. It was a new date. Koyach Sivan is a new date, a novelty of empowerment that in the modern world, in the land of independence and liberty and freedom, we also understand that there is something greater, and we know how to have this unity of obedience, but at the same time cultivating and bringing out the maximum of our potential as individuals, etc. And that's the idea of Shlach Lecha L'Daitcha. I want it to be L'Daitcha. I want you to come to the right conclusions in the realm of Rishus. Should I become a doctor? Should I be a lawyer? Should I be a painter? Should I be a plumber? Should I be an electrician? Every area where there's Rishus in your life, Hashem wants you to make decisions that are in accordance to what He wants. And that's the ultimate. In other words, He doesn't have to spell everything out. The connection to Pirkei Avos this week, there's one Mishnah, which I think is a very, very phenomenal, important Mishnah, which says, this is Pei Gimel, Reb Nechunya ben Akonaim, Mekola Mekabel Olavel Torah, Ma'avirim Mimenu El Malchus Ve'el Derech Eretz. V'chol HaPoirik Mimenu El Torah, Neisen Olav El Malchus Ve'el Derech Eretz. I'm not going to go into the whole meaning over here now, but it means whoever takes the yoke of Torah upon himself, then the yoke of government and the yoke of worldly cares are removed from him. But whoever casts off the yoke of Torah from himself, the yoke of government and the yoke of worldly cares are imposed upon him. So you have to ask yourself the question, who is your boss? And this is a very, very important point. And this is a very important point in life. And I think we've spoken about it many times. What does it mean, Kol HaMekabel Olavel Torah? And this is in a way the key and the solution to make sure that the L'Daitcha will be correct. When you call him a Kabbalah of oil Torah, what does it mean, Kol HaMekabel Olavel Torah? There's many different interpretations, but maybe we could say one interpretation means Kol HaMekabel of oil Torah. He accepts only the authority of the Torah as an authority. Ach lelikim d'mi nafshi. Only in Hashem I put my hope. When it comes to morals, when it comes to values, when it comes to ethics, only the Torah determines the values, the ethics, and morality. And that's what it means, Kol HaMekabel of oil Torah. When you have that foundation, that you see only oil Torah as the oil, there's only one authority, there's only one determiner who decides what are the morals and the ethics and the values, whatever is seen through the prism of the Torah, then Shlach Lecha L'Daitcha, you'll be the sort of person that will rack your brains and you'll be able to come to the right conclusions of what the Torah wants of you, even in cases where the Torah doesn't spell it out. Because the person works on himself so long, as the Alter Rebbe explains, how Torah is lechem u'mozen. The person who learns more and more, soaks it in, steeps, puts his mind into the works of Torah, slowly but surely, that's his nutrient, that's his milk, that's his bread and butter. He gets a makeover. He begins to see things the way they should see things. But you always have to have that humility. Because if not, then you can make a mistake. That's terrible. And that's what happened with the spies. And this answers the question. When Moshe was told, Shlach l'chol l'daitcha, it was good news. It was a new empowerment. But for whatever reason, the spies messed it up. They thought too highly of themselves. Their ego got in the way. Their yeshus. Maybe because they were special people before. And therefore they ended up thinking too highly of themselves. But in the end, they went off the path. Only the person who's nullified could be trusted that you're left to your own devices and you'll come to the right conclusions. And therefore Yeshua sends Meraglim. Because in concept, in Inyan, the whole story of Shlach L'cho, L'daitcha is a good thing. It failed once, but God willing, it won't fail the second time. And we got that power from the story of the Meraglim. That remains forever. That koyach, that empowerment is truth, and that empowerment remains forever. It failed the first time, but it doesn't mean that we weren't given this empowerment. And when we follow the instructions carefully and the ingredients, then everything goes well. There's two words, two vertach that I want to say connected to this. Now, I spoke about the Sikh of Shlach Tovshin Mem Tes, but in the Sikh of Shlach Tovshin Mem Ches, could be I said this once before, the Rebbe very, very unusually says a story. To say a story that happened, I don't know how many decades before, with the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he says that there was someone who went into the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe had commented later to the Rebbe the following. And I'm just going to read you what it says over there in the Sikh of Memches, where he talks about this concept of Shlach l'chol l'daitcha. You don't have to spell everything out. You're a graduate of West Point. You're a graduate of Tomchei Tmimim. You're a graduate. You're a chassid Yerushalayim v'Lamdin. Wow, you got the diploma. Go, go, go. And the Rebbe said a story over here. That the Frierdiker Rebbe says, my father once said about a Meshulach, someone that the previous Rebbe had sent in a certain shlichus. When jener hat umgeben fragen Pratim and Pratim, wie so mekayim sein shlichusei, he started getting into every single nitty-gritty detail, to the minutest questions. Is la'achiv jener as aris von Yechidus, after he left the previous Rebbe's room of Yechidus, hat Kreikedush Merecham Yadne gesagt. The Frierdiker Rebbe said, as fühlt sich wie zu Persche ben Yochid. He's acting like a spoiled only child. Und sagt, So'uni v'hitiluni alayam. He wants to be picked up and carried into the sea. In other words, every single thing should be done for him. He doesn't realize that the whole point is that he should be able to do it on his own and come to the right conclusions. He was given the power, he was given the talents, everything, and still he's acting helpless, like a spoiled only child. And now I'm going to tell you, I never said this story before, this Lashon of the Rebbe, this answer. There's many, many stories similar. And we see this theme by the Rebbe, I would say from day one, where the Rebbe said by the Farbrengen of Yitzhak, Medarf allein ma'apach zayin de eigene nefesh habahamis. We have to transform our own nefesh habahamis. That was by the first gathering where the Rebbe officially accepted leadership. And this theme has been going on throughout. Different Farbrengens throughout the years, but I would say that's a common thread, a common theme that ran through from the beginning. Because this is also Chabad, Avoid the B'Koyach Atzmai, from the times of the Alter Rebbe. But listen to this story. There was a shliach. His name was Reb Moshe Yitzchak Hecht. He was a shliach in New Haven. And he once wrote to the Rebbe in a letter, the Rebbe soll helfen and tunnels. The Rebbe should help and do everything. And the Rebbe answered, wow, listen to this answer. The Rebbe answered, Tere mikro v'aniene. Before you even called out to me, I already responded. I preempted your problem. I preempted your question. Mikvara sisi katsosoi. I already did according to his advice. V'nishlach l'shom. I said there. Harav Reb Moshe Yitzchak Sheyichya Hecht. Moshe Yitzchak Hecht, Rabbi Moshe Yitzchak Hecht, sent a letter to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe is answering him, Moshe Yitzchak Hecht, that I sent you yourself. Shlach lecha l'daitcha. I sent you, Harav Reb Moshe Yitzchak Sheyichya Hecht, u'kenire me'michtove zeh, u'me'akoid moi. But it seems like from this letter and from the previous one you sent me, Adayin Eine Makiroi. You do not recognize Moshe Yitzchak Hecht. You do not recognize yourself. And the abilities that were given to the above person, and the abilities and the powers that were given to you. You don't recognize yourself, and you're not aware of your talents. At the very least, please, from now on, try to recognize him, be aware of him, get in touch with him, be aware of yourself, get in touch with yourself. And the take of a miyad yishtana hakoil. Immediately, everything will change. Hamatzav ruach, your morale, habetochen b'Hashem, your trust in Hashem, hasimcha yom yomes, your daily joy in life, v'chuli, etc., etc. Asker al-Tzin, and the Rebbe says, Asker al-Tzin. I will mention you at the resting place of my father-in-law. So this is one of the most powerful answers of the Rebbe. Basically, the Rebbe is telling the person, look inside yourself. Shlach l'cha l'daitcha. Gawa, you've got the power. We made you a shliach. We've empowered you. We've given everything you need. Just look inside yourself. Look inside the chinuch. Look inside the education. Look who you are. Be aware of yourself. Have a healthy self-awareness. And then you're able to accomplish whatever you have to accomplish. And this is the Shabbos Mavarchim Tammuz. And the Rebbe explains in other places the connection between Gimel Dalet is Sivan and Tammuz. Sivan is the 3rd month from Nisan. Tammuz is the 4th month. Gimel Dalet, the Gemara says, is Goimel Dalim. 3 represents the giver, the Mashpia. Dalet, Tammuz, is the 4th month that represents the Makabel, the recipient. And this is the stress and the emphasis that we have to bring about the Shabbos. Before Chof Chesivin and before Gimel Tammuz, which is coming next week, Shabbos, that we were given koiches, Goimel Dalim. The Rebbe gave us koiches to accomplish whatever you have to accomplish. And if we will recognize that those koiches and tap into our potential, the way we're meant to tap into our potential, so then v'niske zen sich from the Rebbe, do lemata naguf, or lemata me'asar tfachim, v'hu yigalenu. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.